So today's title is called Loosening the Structure of the Ego. Yeah. So before we begin, normally I say, let me first of all define what non-duality is. But before we even begin that, I just want to give a disclaimer that so many teachers have different ways of calling the ego. So for Ramesh Balsekar, who was the student of Nisargadatta Maharaj, the teacher of Roger Castillo, my teacher, also my teacher. But then Roger was my main teacher, but Ramesh was also my teacher. And he would call the ego the healthy functioning. So you know how in psychology they have like the healthy ego. Ramesh didn't really call it in that terms, but his thing was that everybody has an ego. And that's what I think I call the character, and maybe what Tony Parsons calls the character, whereas Ramesh called it the ego. Whereas someone like Eckhart Tolle, he would call the ego kind of the pain body, I think. So it would be like the bad thing. And a lot of teachers call it that, like the ego is separation, the ego is the separate self. So just be aware of that. I tend to just ignore that word most of the time because it's so confusing. But I also do use it sometimes in reference to other people, and sometimes I use it in the negative way and sometimes in the positive way, like Ramesh. So that's confusing. I mean, that's the nature of non-duality, is because non-duality isn't a thing, we can't name it in the positive. We can't say this is what non-duality is. So we're always pointing to something. We're never actually able to name it. And so when we're teaching it, it's the same. We can never quite get this right, and there's no one way of teaching it because it isn't a thing. You know, if it was like a class on how to make the color blue, even though there's many different colors of blue, there is like a parameter of like yellow isn't blue. You can have a yellowy blue, but yellow isn't blue. So you have like a parameter, whereas non-duality, you don't have that parameter because we can't talk about non-duality in the positive. We can't say this is non-duality. Like, what would that be? We can say what isn't non-duality, but yeah, even that we can contradict. And sometimes as a teacher, I get a bit too caught up in the pernicketiness of this, of trying to be too accurate or unconfusing, believe it or not. I think I am confusing, and sometimes I'm confusing because I'm trying to be unconfusing. That's funny, eh? Yeah. So let's get going. Loosening the structures of the ego. So in this conversation, let's take ego as meaning the separate self, not the character, so not the habits and conditions. So Lisa has a character, you all have a character. I don't have my beautiful example, but I was going to say Khaleesi has a character. Well, she can still be the beautiful example. Khaleesi, she had a very defined character. She was sassy and strong and wild and feisty. When she was younger and she didn't have so much pain, I used to call her the external joy. But as she got more pain, I think that name kind of fell away a bit because she's sort of like, yeah. But she certainly had like a very defined character. But that doesn't mean that that is who she felt she was. So Lisa's character is very defined. Lisa's character tends to be a bit of a rescuer, something developed in very early childhood, pre-verbal. It's a tendency. I can't really stop it. Yeah, if there is somebody needing help in a situation, Lisa's, that's me, I could do it. So that's a characteristic. I tend to be very flexible, so very, I always forget that word. You know, it's like a flexible character. Forgotten that word. I'm strong-willed, confident. So these characteristics. And some of them are negative and some of them positive. Like, I care too much for people, which has positive sides but negative sides too. Yeah, and the same with Khaleesi. Like, she had positive and negative sides. Like, she was very feisty, and yeah, would certainly put everybody in their place. She wasn't having none of it. Yeah, so one thing that Khaleesi's loved to do was she loved to run to any closed door and bark at it, which is insanely annoying. And it got worse as she got dementia. But she hated doors being closed, and she knew that we couldn't tolerate her barking at them for long, and it would work. So, I mean, it's positive for her that this strategy worked, but negative for us. So this is, all of our characters have positive and negatives. The biggest mistake on the spiritual path is that I'm going to become an enlightened person, an enlightened character, and I'm going to become perfect. What I think the ego is, if we talk about ego as the separate self, and what I feel like it is in my case and from the teachers that I spent a lot of time with, is the ego is seeking, which creates separation. And the seeking is the phenomena of, I am going to find freedom in particular ways of being or habits or conditions. And I'm going to find freedom in the external world. So it's not the inherent habits and conditions. So say with the rescuer dynamic, the rescuer dynamic goes into seeking when there is a belief, which is often unconscious, and it's like an energy, where freedom will be found if I rescue other people, if I save my mother, for example, or if I save Khaleesi, or if I save friends. So in itself, inherently, it's a condition that I was taught as a child, very pre-verbal. This body-mind was taught it. And then the seeking isn't that. The seeking, the separation, is the belief that that movement will create me happiness and freedom in time. And you're looking for beingness, you're looking for consciousness in saving other people. And that's the seeking, separation, suffering. And this is where I feel like people get confused, because people think that it's the end of these dynamics. Like, certainly it seems that these dynamics become very obvious and get really relaxed in seeing them. However, we've always got to be conditioned as a body-mind mechanism. It's not, we can always improve the body-mind mechanism. So it's not getting to the end of that. It's that dropping away that any action, any behavior, any feeling, any experience, anything that happens externally to us will bring us freedom. That is the lie. And that is the illusion. That is the separation. So if you take Ramana Maharshi, for example, he certainly had a very strong character. Someone was telling me the other day that he used to get furious if people like spilt rice or grain on the floor, maybe on the ashram floor. Like that is a characteristic, that's a boundary of him. It's the same with Khaleesi. She would get furious if people tried to stroke her that she didn't know. That's not separation. But we look at it as a separation, like she is showing anger. She is showing not positive emotions or positive qualities. Therefore, that is seeking and separation. Whereas seeking and separation is this momentum, this energy that believes that freedom is found in time, whereas freedom is found right here. And then the behaviors become very simplified, and there can always be an expansion and change of them. Like I feel like my character can endlessly expand to this realization, and my character become better and nicer. But it's not a final destination for the character. I feel it's really dangerous if somebody believes that their character is enlightened and their character has enlightened behaviors. Compared to other people. What changes is the seeking momentum, the seeking for self in time. And then that's going to relax behaviors. It's going to reduce a lot of the mental activity around behaviors. It's going to completely get rid of suffering, but there's still going to be pain and pleasure. And there's still going to be a variety of all different emotions and all different behaviors. So that's my definition between what habits and conditions are. So this is what I think Roger and Ramesh, how they would phrase it, as habits and conditions. That's the difference between habits and conditions and a separate self. So when it says loosening the structure of the ego, what I'm looking at is not the fundamentals of the character. However, we can look at that and improve that. Like I'm always striving to improve my rescuing quality and to mind my own beeswax. And to stay in myself in social situations, not to go out too much into others. And I can expand that and change that. So it's not changing that when we're loosening the structure. What we're loosening the structure of is the belief that anything will find you freedom in time. And that is often an unconscious movement of agitation. It's this not feeling at home. It's not being connected to yourself. It's not knowing who you are. And when that happens, then you go into lots of mental suffering, like making up stories about other people, having very busy mental activity, having lots of physiological problems. So seeking can create lots of discomfort and illness in the body because there's so many false thoughts going around the head, which is creating a lot of stress. So for example, so say if my wonderful, beautiful example, Khaleesi, so say she became human and she had very strong boundaries. For those that didn't listen last week, Khaleesi passed away recently, moved on. Although I do have a feeling that she might come back. I told her that she can go, and I felt like it was a really pure ending, but I kind of also feel that she's been reborn and she's making her way back. Like, we're going to go to England next week or something, or go somewhere, and then she'll be like, hello, here is a street animal that is helpless, Lisa. Let's see if I trigger your rescuer. So, yeah, there is a little sense that she might come back. But anyway, she's such a great example, and I'm so grateful for using her because she doesn't mind me speaking about her on the internet, whereas my mum or my partner deeply have grievances with that, which is understandable. So Khaleesi had pain in the back of her legs. So she had a very strong boundary that no one was allowed to touch her at the back. And she would snap, particularly at strangers, if they did that. She would really tell them. So if she was identified with that dynamic, what it would look like is lots of mental anguish about why people do this to me, why they don't listen to me, why they cross my boundaries, who do they think they are touching me, why doesn't life love me? And all of this come from seeking. I know that sounds weird that they come from seeking, but it's an investment in the belief she is that body, mind, that she is that body, mind, and, sorry, just one sec. Yeah, so that she is that body-mind mechanism, that things could be different from what they are. So she could do something, the other could do something differently, and that she is victim to life. There is a her there that's victim to life. And it's not an obvious thing, but that whole momentum is when you're disconnected from self. And it goes out, you can go out into lots of thoughts, and it can create lots of discomfort and illness in the body. So say the thing of, why don't people respect me? And that can come up when you're not identified, but this is a different thing. Like, the identification of it is a repetitive thinking about that, and a big feeling of uncomfortableness in the body, and then lots of blame. Why don't people respect me? And then lots of stories about people not respecting you, and people putting you down or not listening to you, and she believes as an entity that in getting people to respect her, she will feel relief from all this suffering. Even though that sounds like a large jump, it's like a momentum of energy. So there keeps being an investment in these thoughts, and then somebody could touch her back legs on the Sunday, and she can be suffering about it for weeks afterwards if she's identified, because the mind thinks that she can only come to rest when people respect her. So the mind keeps going over the wound to try to resolve itself in time, to try to find a peace in itself. So a peace in other people's actions and your reactions. Maybe depends if it's with your reactions, if you're into psychology in this subject. And it's a very unconscious thing, but it's a momentum that's looking for freedom in your thoughts, in your ideas. So rather than it just being like, so it's this mental activity that happens that becomes an energetic feeling, and ironically, that mental activity that is looking for rest in itself, looking for rest in people treating you with respect. If I finally get everyone to treat me with respect, then I can relax. If I finally get the house, then I can relax. If I finally get enough money, then I can get relaxed. So that momentum which goes there actually encourages itself and makes itself worse. So when you were 10 years old, it was less than when you're 20, 30. It encourages itself as an activity. And that creates a sense of separateness from everything. I know that's quite crazy that is what creates separateness, but it is, because you're not in contact with what you are in this moment. You're lost in this daydream of yourself. So with my beautiful, beautiful Khaleesi, she wasn't lost in herself. So she could have these difficult reactions, but as soon as the reaction happened, and even when it happened, she was always in beingness, in herself. So she was always deeply at peace internally, even in negative reactions. The same with Ramana Maharshi, when he would apparently get really angry because of a grain of rice on the floor. Like some people might call that controlling, but there's this energy that comes up where his boundary's been crossed. And I'm not saying that's the right way to react. Like, yeah, he can maybe recondition that, because some people might call it controlling. But at the same time, it can come from such peace. You can't really see an enlightened person. You can resonate with their peace, but in their behaviors, like it just comes from peace, and then it goes back into peace. And it actually, when it's coming out, it is peace, peace, peace. There's no separate person there that's owning the action. The action is happening. And it's all to do with being connected to beingness and the empty looking. So that being who you are, rather than who you are as this story, this person that's, I am a body, I am this person, and my freedom comes from past and future, from things that I've done or things that I'm going to do. And this is the lie. And this is what creates the mind to go into such mental activity and make it feel like somebody is in here, rather than this way is empty and that way is full. Who you are is empty fullness. No thing and everything, or consciousness and beingness. Whatever you like to call it. This is such love, this message. And the reason that it's such love is because of what you are. Look, what you are is such love. This beingness and the empty looking. You're totally contented in yourself, even in pain. So to bring up Khaleesi again, like latterly, particularly the last 2 years, but her whole life she had deformed back legs. Yeah, there was so much pain, and she just sunk into herself. She, like she wasn't there. There was nobody experiencing pain. So even in the last 2 days where she had quite extreme pain, like her deformed legs popped out of themselves, and I think that must have been quite extreme, like something like a dislocated shoulder or something. So I think it was very painful for her. We tried our best to get her help, but we couldn't fix it. And she was on medication, but still, I think it was very painful. But what was so amazing about her is then she's just like straight away, like, and that to me shows great relaxation, that there's nothing there. Like she's in immense pain, and then you lay her down, or you put the food in front of her, she's like, that it's like this. Or when I went down to her and put my head, she liked it, and I did that. She would just do it back, like joy would come out. And you don't see this so much in elder humans, although you do sometimes see it, but you don't see it so much because they energetically feel like the pain is theirs, and so then they're owning and carrying the pain, whereas Khaleesi pain belonged to what it always should belong to, nothing and everything. There wasn't her there that had it or owned it. And that's a fundamentally different way of being. It's a natural way of being. It's our birthright. It's such love. Like, you don't have to carry the burdens of your life. That's down to God. So, then, what is the way to this? What is the way to this freedom? So everybody's path is so unique. There's not one way. There's as many paths as there is apparent people. And at the same time, there is no way. Because a way would be an imagination for you, and that's not really the truth. What's the truth is this empty beingness. However, when you feel like you, sorry, I just go to smile because I can't tell you what I was just about to do. It's going to do a little trick here. This this is whose path would this be? Right now, who would walk a path? However, when there is somebody there, it's better that somebody walks a path rather than falls into apathy or self-hatred or confusion because it doesn't know what to do, so then it does all types of stuff. So it's better to walk a path of freedom than to fall into old habits of being self-abusive, addiction, porn addiction, food addiction, emotional intensity relationships, emotionally intense relationships. So to walk towards apparent freedom is better than to just be telling the person, well, there is no path, there's nothing to do, yuck, 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 yuck. And the recommendations of what I would say, but please know that everybody's path is so radically different. So my recommendations are obviously going to be similar to what happened here and what happened to my teachers. However, it could be on one day that I say something completely different because in the end it's God speaking, it's not Lisa speaking. But more than likely it's going to come out in that colour because life works in a parent logic. So my recommendation would be what Nisargadatta describes as discernment and rejection. And that is seeing the illusion for what it is. So understanding your illusions and seeing them for what they are. Sometimes you might need other people to point out your illusions because it's hard to see your own. Connecting it obviously to the body. Like, so illusions aren't just mental, they become a physiological dynamic. So connecting the illusions to the emotions and the body and the physicality, and then seeing through the illusions of the emotions and the physicality of the body. So that's that. The next thing is satsang, which is meeting in truth, which is hearing repetitively the truth. And that's done best through someone that you resonate with energetically. I can't tell you what that is, but to me, it was like when I would listen to teachers, like my heart, my beingness, my heart of being would begin to vibrate. It didn't always happen, but there was some teachers that I resonated more with than others. So that. Calming down the body. So in India, that would be like yoga, breath work, pranayama. Did I say it right? I'm terrible at these words. But there's so many different ones. Somatic work, so calming the system down, because the system's gone into stress from believing it's someone and that life is your responsibility. And then moving the attention back to this moment. So the personal awareness, rather than it getting lost in thoughts, moving it back to this moment. So Nisargadatta would say putting the personal awareness in the sense of I am. My friend Harold would say put awareness in awareness. I don't know what Ramana Maharshi's practice of that would be. Maybe that would be asking, who am I? It's a similar kind of thing. Yeah. But the who am I might be more the discernment of illusion. Yes. And eat well. Nisargadatta often is referring to in his book I Am That we are made of food. Food and air. So eat and breathe well. Eat and breathe well. I mean, I would say, like, it's most probably better to, buy good quality food that's come from fair trade and fair practice. Like, you most probably don't want to eat food that's come through, like, slavery of humans or torturing animals. I'm not saying be a vegetarian, although that is a huge thing in India. I'm not saying that, but it might be better not to eat food products that have come from lots of suffering, because it is all energy in the end. So that might be something to look at. But these are the recommendations of what to do. And also the last one, which I'm only recently saying, is the importance of community around you. I never really realised that, but it is really important, because a lot of people in non-duality are very isolated, and it's not like Zen or Buddhism where you can go to a local Buddhist centre. So meet other like-minded people that are going through a similar process so they can reflect back to you. Spiritual friends, spiritual community. Yeah. But having said all of that, Roger would say, you think I'm giving a prescription, but really I'm giving a description of something that may or may not happen. And just knowing that the you that I'm talking about is an illusion, and it's an illusion that there is somebody that can practice all these things and do all these things, and that can wake up. Really all there is right now is pure being and this empty looking. And that is who you are, and that is what you are, and that is the freedom. In the end, you can't really buy it from action, but there is wise action and there is unwise action. And to fall into the path, there's nothing to do, I can't get there, and then to just go on with your regular seeking patterns is maybe unwise. It's also unwise to believe 100% in your path as well. Like, so the belief that there can be freedom, but the belief that your path will lead you there, because who will be led there? So any extreme is most probably lack of wisdom, if you understand what I mean. Okay, let's go to questions.